Hey folks, this week we talk with Benny Vasquez about AlmaLinux, what's new in version 10, how it's different from RHEL, why electing the board might be a challenge this time or even more of a challenge next time, and a whole lot more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. This is FLOSS Weekly, episode 839, recorded Tuesday, July the 1st. I want to get paid twice. It's time for FLOSS Weekly. That's the show about free, Libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and today we've got something that, well, I have already learned some things that are going to help me out in my professional/private life, because I've got an old server over in that corner of this room inside the cabinet. It is just old enough that I can't run, well, I didn't think I could run a spin of Enterprise Linux 10. And I've discovered in the pre-show that I can. And that's something we're going to talk about because we are chatting with Benny Vasquez of AlmaLinux. Welcome, Benny.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you back. You know, I didn't go and look at what show number you were on last. I bet I can find it real quick because my Google foo is strong.
But you probably don't have many Bennies.
Probably not, especially not Bennies with a lowercase b at the beginning.
Exactly.
That's gotta be your thing.
It is. It's funny. It started as a weird, silly branding thing. Because I was working in marketing at a web hosting company, and we were talking about like personal brands, but honestly, before personal brand was a thing. This was 2004, 2005. And now anytime I see my name with a capital B, I just get mad.
It was 764, episode 764.
Nice.
Year and a half ago. So things have happened. I don't know, I would say changed. Yeah. A few things have changed, but lots of things have happened in AlmaLinux since then. But before we fully dive into that, I was thinking about this last night, and how hands-on are you with the technical stuff? Do you run Linux somewhere? Do you have a server running AlmaLinux?
So yeah, I do actually have my my pre-life, I guess. I used to work at this company called cPanel, which is a web hosting control panel. Mm-hmm. And after I left there, I needed a place to host my website, so I set up a cPanel server with CentOS, like everyone did. Like
everybody did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I, obviously, after CentOS, the end of CentOS was announced and I needed something to move to, I obviously picked AlmaLinux. And so, yeah, I do in fact have a server running AlmaLinux. I also have a laptop running AlmaLinux. Mm-hmm. I am not using it right now because I have been using Macs for 15 years at this point. So I have not adjusted my workflow.
There's this project you can put on that Mac.
There sure is. It's actually, so AlmaLinux doesn't support the M4s yet, but I'm sure you've heard about Asahi Linux, right?
Oh yes.
It's so cool.
Yes. That is an impressive engineering effort.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to see that they are continuing on and still making good progress, even after Hector Martin kind of burned out. Honestly, I think that's what happened.
I mean, that's what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
As a person who has burned out, thankfully not publicly, but I've definitely hit that burnout.
Yes.
That's exactly what that looked like to me.
Yes. Yeah. So you can run on the earlier, like the M1 through M3, you can put AlmaLinux on it?
Mm-hmm. Not the M3.
Okay, the M1 and the M2. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's a lot of fun. There's some really, and that's a good segue actually, because there's some really interesting architectures that you can put AlmaLinux on now. So there's ARM builds, of course. Pretty sure there's RISC-V builds as well.
So we're very, very close.
There's preview builds.
Right. We have both. We've been active in the work that the Fedora project has been doing. Mm-hmm. So we've been helping there, and we're trying to make sure that things flow the right way, right? Mm-hmm. So it started in Fedora, and we've been working there, and we have a cluster and have started doing builds of AlmaLinux. It is very slow, as you might imagine.
Yes.
Especially compared to what we're used to with all of the other builds that we have. But we have a bunch of hardware that's been donated to the AlmaLinux project, and it's it's actually in a rack in our infrastructure lead's basement right now. Because of course, because open source.
Because of course it is.
That's how this goes. But we've been, we're working on it. We were hoping to bring it out with 10, but it's just not ready yet.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
It'll be there.
I've commented several times. So I've purchased like RISC-V development boards. In fact, here's one of them, the Star 5. You know,
nice.
This is the it's the JH7110. And like it's great. It's got dual Ethernet on it, so you can put OpenWRT and run it as a router. It's got HDMI out. It's got the Raspberry Pi 40-pin header on it too, which is sort of interesting that that's become a standard, but it totally has.
Yeah.
It's not a great experience to actually use.
No.
But it is just enough. Let's see, how did I put it? It is just enough for developers to get on it and compile things, and so the very, very important bootstrap step for RISC-V.
Exactly.
But not ready for prime time yet.
No. And if you think about it, like we have never, in my experience at least, I have never seen a new architecture get adopted at the speed with which RISC-V is being adopted.
Yeah.
Like, kudos to the RISC-V project and all of the work that they're doing to get people invested early. It's really cool.
Yeah, because most of the other architectures that Linux supports, like predate Linux. Like ARM has been around for longer than the Linux kernel has. x86 has. You could sort of say that we saw the x86-64 architecture come along, I think, after the kernel was started, and probably things like Itanium, maybe, but of course nobody supports that anymore. But it's very, very new, and there are some definite growing pains from how fast that support has come online, how fast the architecture has been built, for that matter, too.
Yeah. Well, and especially because there are, like, I'm going to get to the edge of my understanding right now, but I know that there are, like, minute differences between the different boards that mean that, okay, we support RISC-V, but we only support this, like, producer of it. Like,
yes.
That's one of the other problems we're running into is how much can we do and how limited do we want to be if we do release it? Yeah,
it's the fragmentation problem.
Yeah.
On the microarchitecture level, which is although we sort of have that now with x86-64 and the whole V2 and V3 and V4 scheme, which don't map perfectly to reality. Like I guess that's a problem with any time you try to put things into categories. The categories are useful, but they're just categories. They don't map perfectly to reality ever. AlmaLinux is doing something about the x86-64 version levels as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the extremely boring story short, I guess, with Red Hat 10, they changed the minimum version of the chipset that they support to x86-64 V3, which is, and they're doing that so that they can take advantage of the speed increases and the features that come with that chipset. Fully understand why they did it, but it is it leaves behind a huge amount of hardware that's still perfectly valid, still perfectly usable. Like one of the arguments is that the hardware isn't efficient or isn't good for the environment, and I'm like, sure, but just trashing it isn't good for the environment either. Like replacing it just to replace it isn't good.
There's a lot of those weird arguments that get made. So the term that I kind of like is greenwashing, where it's like, oh, we're being environmentally friendly. It's like, you're not really though.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's an entirely different subject. But
like, if you feel compelled for that reason, great, upgrade your stuff. That's fine. But there's huge amounts of especially adoption for the AlmaLinux community, where replacing hardware that quickly just because Red Hat decided to drop support is not an option, right? So they they asked us to support V2, and we added a build. And then as part of that conversation, it was like, we all know that the enterprise Linux ecosystem hugely relies on EPEL, the extra packages for enterprise Linux project from Fedora. And they follow Red Hat, so the builds that they're doing will now only support V3. And that means that AlmaLinux's V2 release is not as useful as it could be. And so we worked with the EPEL project and said, hey, we want to rebuild your packages for V2. We're not going to change anything. Any bugs or anything that we find, we'll send upstream. We'll make it so that bug reports are very clear. Like, if somebody comes to you with a problem and it's with one of our builds, it'll be very clear in like the data that they give you, so you can redirect them to us. Is that cool, man? and they were supportive of it. So what we're doing is just rebuilding EPEL for V2, so that people that want to use AlmaLinux with the V2 support can still take advantage of all of the work that the EPEL project does.
Yeah, that's great. It's amazing how many things you got to do with a rel or rel derivative, and the instruction install EPEL. And there is another, I don't remember the name of it. There is one other sort of semi-official third-party package, but EPEL is the extra packages for enterprise Linux is the big one.
Yep.
So with these things that AlmaLinux does, and we'll get into more of them, but who pays for this? Who pays for the rebuild of EPEL for x86-64 V2? Where does that money come from?
That is always a good question. So there's two. Okay, so we have 35 sponsors.
Okay.
That give us support in a variety of ways. Just like any open source project, some of them give us money, some of them give us people, some of them give us like credits.
Sure.
For example, both Microsoft and Azure give us both Microsoft Azure and AWS. That's what I was trying to say. Right? Give us credits on the cloud platforms to do builds and host, all of the different pieces that go into making AlmaLinux go. But we also have 2 platinum level sponsors that give us money and people. So there's Cloud Linux and there's CyberTrust Japan. And between those two, especially around like a build time, we typically have around 40 like active engineers. On a regular basis, it's much closer to like 10 to 20. But in terms of like the effort, that's all done by those people that are paid to contribute to AlmaLinux. So it's not like I'm writing a check to somebody, but it's definitely the foundation finding the resources to do it, and then the work being done. Right.
Is AlmaLinux itself a nonprofit?
Yes. Yeah. That was one of the big things for us when the whole shift with CentOS came out. We said we don't want this to be possible. We don't want this to be anything that can be bought or sold. We want it to outlive us in such a way that as long as the community needs it to be around, it will be. So we set up a 501c6 in the US. We're hoping to get our C3 status, but that requires a diversity in funding that we just have not hit yet. And then the board is all elected. We have we're actually having another election this year that will bring up, I think it's 5 of the seats are getting reelected this year. And the foundation is staffed and managed by volunteers, but a number of those people like me are sponsored to work full-time for the project. I 2 years ago, holy crap, it's been 2 years. I was at Microsoft and I got laid off as part of the first big wave of layoffs in 2023. And while I was looking for a job, the whole shift in Red Hat source code location thing happened. And it became really apparent that AlmaLinux really needed somebody doing kind of community outreach and marketing sort of stuff full time. And I convinced the folks at CloudLinux to pay me to do this job full time. So I've gotten to do open source leadership and open source, advocacy full time for it, and it's pretty awesome.
I've not seen any angry mobs with torches and pitchforks coming for AlmaLinux. Other projects, sure, yes, exist. But AlmaLinux not so much. You guys have stayed out of the news for that particular reason. So
I'm trying, man.
Well done
actually,
for that.
Hilariously, this is my favorite sticker.
I like that so much. And it happens for various reasons, but it drives me nuts when I see open source projects and all of the drama around them, like needless drama.
The needless drama is the problem, right? Like,
yeah.
There's going to be, we're all humans. We're going to have differing opinions. We're going to have like hard conversations. That
Sure.
part is, frankly, it makes us better when we have hard conversations, because if I am the only, thank God the people in my project have strong opinions and the willingness to bring them to me and say, we're doing this wrong, we need to fix it.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't, then it would just be the Benny show, and that doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't have enough expertise.
Yeah.
It makes me happy that we're doing that.
Absolutely. I think the thing I see that drives me the craziest is an open source project does something that is mildly controversial, which, again, that happens. Sometimes hard decisions have to be made.
Right.
And it shows up on Phoronix, or a YouTuber covers it. It's like, well, okay, that was going to happen.
Yep.
And then people start giving feedback. Like, we don't like this. And some small percentage of those people that give feedback are not very nice about it. Okay, this happens all the time. And then you've got a community manager. This is the part where really it goes sideways, in my opinion, watching this in several projects. The community manager freaks out and just starts banning everybody that has negative feedback. It's like, no, that is not the right solution here. No. You need to walk away from your phone. Turn your phone on silent, sit it on the table, just walk away for 24 hours. Let people know that I'm going to go take a break, walk away, and then come back and deal with it. Don't just ban everybody.
No. And it's one of the hardest things to teach and learn is how to weather that kind of storm. I've been through a couple of situations where like a community around what I was doing or what I was the face of at the time were very, very upset. And you have to be able to navigate the line between, I hear you and I want to hear your feedback and I want to engage with you. And now you're doing personal attacks. Like that's not okay. We can have a conversation about how mad you are. I'm 100% into that. But as soon as you cross this line into like making it personal, then it's not okay. But knowing how to de-escalate, knowing how to engage with people that are that angry, justifiably or not, it's a hard skill to learn.
I think not taking it personally is a big part of it, and that is also different, especially when you're in the midst of it and it's your 100th message that you've had to read for the day. It is very difficult to have that detachment.
It's really hard. It's really hard, especially because if you have attached your personal value to the thing that they're attacking, then it's really hard not to take it personally. Like if somehow we did end up with a mob of pitchforks right now, I have put so much of myself into AlmaLinux, I think that I would have a really hard time. But it's a lot easier when it's a commercial thing and you didn't make the decisions. Just say, I didn't decide any of this. You can be as mad as you want because I'm mad with you.
That's on them.
Exactly.
Yeah, fun stuff. So you guys are about to have a board election. And this kind of fits interestingly into this because there's there are projects that are having problems filling their board slots. I've seen some of this. Is that something that AlmaLinux has had to face, or has the lack of drama helped with that?
Actually, we have had to face that, and it's funny because I would have expected the lack of drama to kind of to help, but it also means that while we have people who are passionately in support of AlmaLinux, they are not excited about joining a board,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a thing that all open source projects face, especially around trying to balance between making sure that the people that are on the board are invested in some way, and the making sure that the people who care about the project for whatever reason get to engage in a way that feels comfortable for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard because you want to have, as a person who is responsible for the foundation, I want to make sure that the people who are involved in the project know what conflicts are, and how to navigate that kind of situation,
Mm-hmm.
and know how to, approach the. I'm trying to figure out how to politely say this. We're going to have disagreements, but we need to go forward united.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like coming together as a group to have disagreements in a productive way,
Mm-hmm.
and then go forward as a united front is important.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to tell anybody they're not allowed to have an opinion, but that's always rough, right? If you end up with a person who doesn't have the right motivators, shall we say, involved in the board, then it can get messy. You also have to really, especially because as the people who are very angry with Red Hat kind of calm down and get quieter, we're not seeing the influx of people saying, I want to give here because I feel really strongly that I hate Red Hat. I'm like, well, I want you here mostly because you love AlmaLinux, right? Like, it's a slight difference.
Yes.
And it's hard to bring those people in, or even really identify them, especially because being on a board feels like a big thing,
mm-hmm.
even though it's really just like coming to a meeting, talking to everyone, and making sure that the project has, financial stability and is continuing to serve its community. Like that's all you got to do.
Yeah.
But it feels like a big thing.
How many board members are there slated to be?
That's a thing that I should know off my head. I think it's 9. I think we have 9 slots, and I think we have 8 people currently occupying those.
Okay. Are they all community selected, or is this? Does AlmaLinux have a situation? I know some organizations do, where like if you're a platinum sponsor, you get to put one of the board members on the board. Is that something AlmaLinux does?
So no, it is all community elected, but there's an asterisk. The platinum sponsors and all the sponsor members get slightly heavier votes, like weighted votes.
Okay.
So the way that it happens is like I think they have it's some number of votes. I don't want to misquote it because then people will accuse me of misrepresenting. But there is some number of votes that if I am a silver sponsor member, then I have, as an individual member, I have 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think silver sponsor members have 10.
Okay.
So they can, spread those across multiple people if they want to, or they can throw them all behind one person. Each level gets different numbers of votes.
Mm-hmm.
So the platinum sponsor members do get a pretty heavy influence, and because of that can pretty easily put a person pretty far ahead,
right, if
they care about it. But we also have 400 individual members. So even if that platinum sponsor gets, say, 40 votes, it's still going to be balanced out by the individual members. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to put somebody there that is bad for the project.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
And so when you guys do the election, how many of those seats go back up for re-election? Do they all go at the same time?
They do not, thankfully.
Yeah, that seems like that'd be a little wild.
Yeah. It would have been that, but we have the first election was in October of 2023. Mm-hmm. And we, since then, have had 2 additional elections. Was it 2 or maybe just 1? Man, I should know all of this, and I don't have it in my head. But all of that to say, 2 of the members of the board right now will not be coming up for a re-election because they were just elected. I think they still have one more year in their term, so they won't be up for re-election. But there are 6 of us that will be.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have to get elected too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm the chair, but the chair is chosen by the board.
Right.
So we're all elected as directors, and then among the directors, we pick a chair.
Yeah. Very interesting. It'll be fun to see who makes it and who doesn't. You said that there was some challenge in finding enough people to run. Are there some shoe-ins? Is there anyone that's running that's really controversial?
So we haven't done the nominations yet. The election will happen in September, I think.
Okay.
Is what we decided. And the nominations will happen sometime in August.
Okay.
And then,
couple of months.
Yeah, so we've got some time. The big thing, we thankfully haven't had anybody that has been super controversial try to join the board. That's been nice. In talking with the directors that are up for re-election, everybody has decided that they will be rerunning, which is nice. But that also means that all of us are going to have to take a term off in 3 more years because we are term limited. We can only serve 2 back-to-back terms. So I'm still working hard to make sure that the people who are excited about the project and invested in the project have the ability to step in as we have to cycle out, because the project needs leadership. Every open source project needs leadership and needs invested leaders. I just want to make sure that it's not, I never want to set up a project that's going to be dependent on the people that are currently here.
Right.
If for whatever reason I win the lotto or get really sick or like whatever the thing is, right?
The bus factor.
If I have to step away, I don't want the project to fail just because I'm not here. I haven't done a good job if that ends up happening.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've just celebrated some milestones for AlmaLinux. We've got 9.6 and 10 coming out at about the same time. Must have been a kind of a wild month or 2 trying to get all of that ready.
Yeah, it always is.
Yeah.
It always is. So Red Hat has historically done either a week or 2 apart every time they do a release. This time there was something up with the way that they were releasing, and they released 10 at Red Hat Summit, but it was like they didn't do any of the announcements. There were no release notes. There were no nothing, but they announced it at the event, and we were like, I don't know what to do. Like, we're ready to go, but should we go? Should we not go? And so they did 9.6 the same day.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, so we ended up doing 9.6 first because we felt really confident about that. And then we finally got a hold of somebody inside Red Hat who said, it's just honestly a clerical problem. It's fine. And we were like, okay, cool. So then we did 10.
That was kind of something I was wondering about. Like, do you have inside content? Is there a back channel between AlmaLinux and Red Hat? Sounds like there is now.
I mean, yeah, we've always had connections inside Red Hat where we've been in the community for a really long time, right? The official back channel is from me to a couple of the leaders over there, but there's all kinds of, inside baseball. We've been friends with Jack, who's on our board, used to work at Red Hat for years and years. So, yeah, for sure, we've got connections and friends there.
Yeah. And so, what's the big headlines with AlmaLinux 10? Like, so, okay, before I even ask that, what was Kitten?
So, I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. The first one is, when Red Hat shifted where they were storing their source code in 2023, we opted to shift the upstream that we were using to CentOS Stream. That meant that we're still building alongside Red Hat. We're still matching the versions. We're still releasing at the same cadences and all of that kind of stuff, but we're pulling the source code from the same place that they are. Once we started building AlmaLinux 10, we knew it was coming. We said, we kind of want to get started setting up everything to do with AlmaLinux 10 ahead of time. And we're kind of going to have this build of AlmaLinux that is 10, but 6 months early, because CentOS Stream 10 was out. So we knew that we could just pull all of that data and start building it. And using that as our upstream has been really, really useful. And then we had some people come to us and say, hey, we want to do you have a look at what AlmaLinux 10 is going to be yet? Because we want to start adding support for AlmaLinux 10 in our software. We want to start, people that are building based on AlmaLinux 10 or AlmaLinux, they wanted to get an early look at what AlmaLinux 10 was going to be. And we said, yeah, I mean, kind of. We've been building it, but it's not like a release. And so then we decided it was going to be a release so that people that wanted to use it to start working on those things had access to it. And when we were naming it, we came up with all of the traditional names, right? The dev and all of the ones that everybody would kind of immediately recognize. But I also put on the list Kitten because all of our releases have a code name that is a color and a cat. And so I was like, it's the small cat that's gonna grow. It's the kitten. It's gonna grow into the cat. And at first everybody hated it. And then once we had knocked off all of the other ideas that were on the list for one reason or another, we ended up with Kitten. So Kitten acts as our upstream for what we're building for 10, and it gave everybody early access to what AlmaLinux 10 would be.
Yeah. It was pretty neat to see it out there. Unfortunately, when I went to grab it and try to run it on something, it was a weird ARM board, and it didn't work. The builds were not quite there yet. And unfortunately, I quickly ran out of time on that project to try to actually get it to compile, because repeatedly compiling the Linux kernel is just, it's on my bingo card, but I was not able to check it off this time.
I get it. Trust me.
It's just a sign I need a faster desktop to be able to do the builds faster.
Yeah,
I'd be able to get so much more done.
The problem is that you are limited by your technology.
Exactly.
And that means that you have to improve the technology.
Of course. That is exactly what that means. So AlmaLinux in itself, what's the difference between AlmaLinux and upstream Red Hat? And I know that it was based on CentOS, and CentOS was basically a bit for bit rebuild. AlmaLinux is less so now. What are sort of the big differences that people should be aware of? So
what we have done with 10 is kind of take advantage of the fact that we are building separate from Red Hat, alongside, still compatible, still matching software versions and all of that kind of stuff, like I said. But we have a lot more freedom because we don't have to match Red Hat one for one. And we can still do things that our community needs without having to follow Red Hat exactly. And we are super taking advantage of that with 10, with obviously that V2 build that we talked about, but we also did things like add Spice support, because that had been unsupported since RHEL 9. So, people needed it. We had multiple requests constantly, people asking for support. So we did that. We enabled frame pointers, and actually you mentioned Phoronix. They just did a bunch of benchmarking of AlmaLinux 10 versus Rocky and RHEL, and one of the biggest complaints, or I guess concerns around us enabling frame pointers, was that it would slow everything down. But the benchmarking that Phoronix did proved that wrong. That it is still just as fast. It is exactly in line with Red Hat.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nice. We also added a tech preview of support for IBM Power. It is very, very close to actually ready, but there were a couple things still wrong that we didn't want to say it was supported with like knowing that there were bugs, right? So that'll hit full release or full support in 10.1.
Yeah, very cool. So what does that bring the platform list up to now for AlmaLinux? x86 64, of course. ARM. RISC-V is not there quite yet officially?
Not quite yet, no.
Okay.
And then we've got S390 and PowerPC. Look at me coming up with the full list.
Yeah, nice. S390, what's that?
Go ahead.
The S390, is that's an IBM thing, right? That's one of their big iron machines.
Yeah, those are all the like massive there's a word that I'm not coming up with that is not supercomputer, but that's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I can't think of it either. It's the opposite of a workstation.
Exactly.
Big machine.
Yeah. We're too old.
Oh my goodness. It's bad when I have tip of the tongue syndrome at the same time as the guest does.
Yeah, right? At least normally you can count on one of us to come up with the word.
Yeah. Anyway. And then so one thing that I've never fully understood is the point release in Red Hat. And AlmaLinux does it as well. It's because I'm used to running other distros. I run Fedora on my main machine, and there is no idea of point releases there. Yep. What is the deal with the point release?
So it's kind of there's going to be a lot of people mad at me when I say this, right? But it is, there are some software version upgrades or updates. There are some like minor feature additions, that kind of stuff. But it's mostly, from what I can tell, we did more work. It's worth it from the Red Hat perspective to keep paying for this operating system because we did stuff. And it's not just security releases. And it allows them to maintain specific versions for long term. So like if you're, when I say specific versions, like the Perl version isn't going to change much, or the base level software versions aren't going to change much. So as an enterprise, I can count on stability there, and I know that my code is still going to work as it's running on this. But there are some feature updates. There are some minor, like I said, minor version updates that will bring in more functionality.
So someone can say, I need to stay at 9.5 and not go to the 9.6 update because I need this exact version of Perl.
Kind of. They won't. There's this concept of long-term support in Red Hat. If you go with Red Hat specifically, they do like extended support for the minor versions. We don't.
Oh, okay.
But at Red Hat they absolutely do. And all of our support partners would help if you needed to stay on a minor version of AlmaLinux. They'll do, especially Cloud Linux, they do like security updates for extended support for minor versions. Yeah. There's one version. My brain is I just got back from travel and my brain is fighting me today.
The travel fog is real.
Right. I think it was 9.3. Somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a version of AlmaLinux that got FIPS certified. And so obviously, like we're not shipping security releases for that version, but Cloud Linux will. So if you need FIPS certification along with security updates, which I assume you do need security updates, then you want to go talk to them.
The FIPS certification is not too useful without them.
Right? You've got 9.6 will also be FIPS certified. So
very good.
Yeah. If you need it, you can go get support from Cloud Linux long term and still have AlmaLinux
Mm-hmm.
and FIP certification.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool to see. Now, you guys have taken the opportunity that you're not bit for bit compatible with Red Hat to do some other interesting things I've seen, like push bug fixes and even security fixes out first.
Yes.
I've been very fascinated to see this.
It's, again, we're serving our community, right? The first time we did it was directly after Red Hat had changed where had forced us to change where we were pulling from. And there was this massive security flaw that the fix was tested and released upstream. We all knew that it could be patched. Red Hat was dragging their feet for some reason.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know what? We're not doing it. We're just going. And so we pulled in the patches, did a bunch of testing because it was the first time that we had deviated from Red Hat and we were terrified. And everything came through fine. And we've continued to do that. So if there's a bug that gets, especially, a massive security flaw that gets patched, and there's like a coordinated release, we get to participate in that because we don't have to wait for Red Hat. But the cool thing is, once Red Hat does release the thing, we revert to what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not deviating heavily or like exponentially over time. It's just in the short term, we've got this patch out. It's meaning that AlmaLinux systems are not vulnerable anymore. But then we're still staying in line with Red Hat without having to wait.
Right. I remember. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was a fairly big security thing, and it was very odd that Red Hat was just dragging their feet on it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put on my conspiracy theorist hat for just a second and say, no,
I love it.
I am aware that I'm putting this hat on, but I will still go ahead and make the comment. Back when Microsoft used to do this all the time, my thought then was, they've gotten a letter from the NSA that says, we are aware of this bug, do not patch it until this date. And it would surprise me if Red Hat was doing that. And at the same time, it would not surprise me. Because if you get one of those national security letters, you're not allowed to tell anybody about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. As the person that used to get the knock on the door from the FBI at the web hosting company that I used to work at, that's like, hi, we're going to take down this server and you don't get to ask questions about it.
That sort of thing does happen.
Okay. Yeah, it does happen.
It absolutely does happen. I don't know for sure that Microsoft has ever delayed, or any vendor for that matter, has delayed pushing patches out. But I would guess that it has happened at least once to someone.
It has to have, right? Like, that's too much of a... It's too much of a tantalizing option for them not to have ever been able to take advantage of it.
Right. And the place where that really gets iffy is you start thinking then, well, so then do these special services places like the NSA, do they have people on payroll that work inside of companies that tip them off?
I want to get paid twice. Can you imagine?
I mean, it's a huge ethical concern, but yeah, that'd be fun.
You're right. I'll get there eventually, but I am Capricorn through and through. I want to get paid twice. Oh man, that sounds amazing.
It'd be a pretty sweet gig. All right, so that is my conspiracy hat thinking.
I love it.
I will take that hat back off for now.
Yeah. I mean, for that matter, no, never mind. I was going to push it further and say if they wanted to do that, then they could just go to the project and say, assuming it's a US-based project, they might be able to influence some kind of control in some way. Well,
so it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, and so we were having fun with that, but that has happened.
Oh yeah.
That was the SSH thing in libxz.
Yeah.
That was someone impersonating a project developer, got to the point of being a trusted developer that could make releases, and then pushed extra code into the release. And A Microsoft employee, it's funny, a Microsoft employee found that because suddenly his server was taking a few extra seconds to SSH into it. He's like, what's going on? And the guy,
I love that.
Oh yeah, it's a great story. Everything about it's a great story.
Such a good story. And it's such a good example of what can happen in open source when we neglect our developers. Like, if we actually pay attention to people and give them the support that they need, and whether that's financial or just work, then they can't be taken advantage of like this. And it's also made us like super hyper vigilant at AlmaLinux. There's always people coming in and say, hey, I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. But like, if they're acting odd, we all immediately key into it. Like, this one feels weird.
Yeah, so Debian, for the longest time, I think they probably still do, Debian had this like archaic really weird policies. Like, to become a Debian developer or package maintainer, I forget the exact term they use, you have to meet up with an existing developer in person to get your keys signed. And I was like, oh man, that onboarding process is terrible. And now I look back at that and like, they knew what was coming.
They knew. Absolutely. And at this point, like, nobody gets access to build and release that isn't extremely vetted. Like, extremely vetted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to. I mean, so the libxz thing was just sort of for those that weren't paying attention and didn't realize what was going on, that was sort of the eye-opening moment. But I mean, you think about how many computers around the world are running AlmaLinux.
Yeah.
Or run. So we talked to is it? I want to say Joshua Steinberg. That might not be the right name, but the developer behind libcurl. I think his name is Joshua. Let's see if I remembered that right.
Tell me the answer, computer.
Yes. Daniel Stenberg. Okay, I was half right. 50%. 50-50. Batting 50-50 on that one. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. The bad thing is I was pretty sure Joshua was right, and I wasn't sure about the last name. But anyway. So we interviewed him, and he's like, libcurl is running on 1 billion computers around the world, at least. Yeah. And when we asked him about it, I'm like, how do you handle that pressure, knowing that it's running on that many? So then you think about it, and it's like, well, okay, so what is, if you were to try to take this and put it in a dollar amount, how much money would it be worth to run arbitrary code as a part of that libcurl install base?
Exactly.
And that is a very large number.
Yeah.
So the same thing has to be true of AlmaLinux. I don't know that it's it is not in as many places as libcurl is, if only because every copy of AlmaLinux has libcurl as a part of it.
Exactly.
The set, one set completely contains the other. But still, there are a bunch of servers with a lot of internet access for people that want to DDoS, with a lot of information that might be secure or private. And so if you were to try to put a dollar amount on that, like, how much would it be worth for someone to inject something malicious into AlmaLinux?
It's terrifying. Because, and you have to think about it, like, it's not just the number of installs, but where it's installed, right? Like, I know that we have around 1.6 million devices calling home just to our mirror system. So those are only the ones that are calling home for updates to the mirror system that we manage, we control. Anybody that's using their own mirror, which is a ton of people, they're not, I don't have those numbers. I can tell you that based on conversations at conferences, we're looking at around 3 million. But that's still, like, it's a lot of devices, but it's also, places like the U.S. Army and Chevron, and like, I know of a number of banks that I won't name because that might not be great, but like, the places matter just as much as the number of devices, right? Because if you can get root access to those devices and they're, behind something, because their mirrors are going to sync to our mirrors, and then you'll get access to the devices that aren't even using our stuff. Then you can start sniffing traffic. You can start doing some scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Those are the things that keep me up at night.
I'm sorry. I'm glad somebody is worried about it, but I'm sorry it has to be you.
Yeah, I get it. I appreciate that.
All right. Let's see. We talked about elections. We talked about processor types. What haven't we talked about yet? What else is going on at AlmaLinux that people will want to know about?
I want to do a shameless plug.
Sure.
For anybody that is in or will be in Vancouver, Canada, we are hosting an AlmaLinux Day. So we do these events called AlmaLinux Days. They are all driven by somebody in the community wanting it to happen. Mm-hmm. We've had 3 so far. This will be our 4th. We've had 2 in Tokyo and 1 in Germany. This one is centered on the VFX community because it's adjacent to an event called SIGGRAPH. Oh. We have a huge amount of adoption in the VFX community that I honestly didn't know about. It's one of my favorite things to go to an event and have somebody walk up to me and say, "Oh, we love you guys. We use you." And I had no idea because it's just one more place that I know that we're serving a need and it makes me happy. Mm-hmm. But we went to SIGGRAPH for the first time last year and the response was insane. It was awesome. There's a company that I'm going to show my ignorance here. There's a company called ILM, or Industrial Light Magic.
Yes.
I did not know who it was. And they walked up to me. One of their employees walked up to me at one of the evening events and said, "Hey, I'm from ILM and we use you guys. We just actually replaced you or used you on all of our desktops and we're moving to you on our render clusters and yada, yada, yada." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I'm so excited." And I was at that moment wearing earrings that are the Millennium Falcon. So like I am certain he expected a very different reaction. And then the next day, Tristan is like one of the big guys that has been helping me in the VFX industry, like serve the VFX industry. Mm-hmm. He said, I was like, "Do you know this company ILM?" Like, and he was like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, whoops. Okay.
Okay, in fairness, I don't know that I would have immediately put together that ILM is Industrial Light and Magic. I definitely know who Industrial Light and Magic is.
Right.
But putting it together from the acronym, that is pretty understandable.
I didn't know either of them. Mm-hmm. I was completely ignorant. I have been so far removed from anything VFX or like movie production or anything like that I had no idea. But anyway, back to AlmaLinux Day in Vancouver is centered on the VFX community because that's the event that we're next to, and that's what we're trying to serve with this one. Mm-hmm. We've done the web hosting industry in Germany. In Tokyo, it continues to be about educating the open source community about AlmaLinux and open source in general, mm-hmm. like the software community about open source in general. And it's really fun for me because it is one of those one of those moments where you get to really connect with people who directly benefit from the work that you're doing. It's very fun. So August 9th, free registration. If you are close to Vancouver, come hang out.
Yeah. I'm curious. So this brings something to mind. You mentioned educating folks in Japan about this. Is there any uptake of AlmaLinux in mainland China and the Longsoon architecture? Is that what they call it?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And that
I know if I look at our mirror heat map, mm-hmm. there are certainly AlmaLinux installs in China. I wonder. I don't know anything about that architecture, so I'd have to look.
I think it's the Longsoon. Is that what they call it? I'm trying to remember now. It's something like that. Yeah, Longsoon. It's the name of the general purpose MIPS-based computer architecture. And of course, so AlmaLinux is based in the U.S., isn't it? It's where it's a 801 C6. You said.
501 C6.
50. You're not Wi-Fi.
Exactly. Yeah.
Too many numbers.
Yeah, we're incorporated in the U.S. But...
Right. So trying to reach out to Chinese companies could be challenging, especially these days.
Yeah, there are a number of countries right now where finding the appropriate type of contacts
Mm-hmm.
is a challenge.
Yes, there's a list of questions you have to ask. All right, have you ever been approached by this person? Have you ever worked with one of these organizations? Have you ever done this? Okay, we can have a conversation.
Okay, now we can talk. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes, I'm going through some of that too.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's fun. It's
so
it's
much
not fun. I wish we didn't have to do it, but there's a lot of things about the world that I wish that is not the way it is. All right. Interesting. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. It's been a lot of fun. I will ask once again, is there anything that we haven't covered that we need to?
I don't think
need
so.
to let folks know about. All right. Well, then I've got to ask you a couple of final questions.
Yes.
And that is...
Are these ones that I answered before, too?
Probably.
I hope I have the same answers.
It's fine if they change. People's answers change all the time. Do you have a favorite text editor and or scripting language?
So, text editor is... the reason I'm giving you this big sigh is because it is a text editor that I found out recently is no longer actively supported. So I'm gonna have to change to something else. But it's called TextMeet. And I have used it for a decade, and I'm really sad. Like, I had a feature request, and so I went to email the address that was on the website, and it bounced, and I was like, oh, that's not a good sign. And I did some digging, and it seems like it hasn't been supported for a while. I'm surprised it continues to work, but that's also a testament to the software that was built.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to have to change, but that's been my favorite for a number of years.
Yeah. And then scripting language.
Oh, Bash forever.
Bash.
I'm a sysadmin at heart, so Bash forever.
We interviewed the guy that wrote Bash, and I'm not going to be able to come up with his name. We interviewed him though, and at the end of it, I was doing it, and at the end of it, we got to ask that question. And I'm like, I don't know for sure that Bash counts as a scripting language, and I offended him. He was like, of course it does. So ever since then, fights. Yeah, I try to avoid the drama, but man, sometimes it just comes naturally. So Bash is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Fantastic.
I have it on good authority.
You have it on good authority.
Yes. All right, Vinny, it has been delightful. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And we will have to do it again, maybe about the time AlmaLinux 11 drops. We'll come back and we'll do it again.
I like it.
The world will be very different by then, but that's fine. It'll give us lots to talk about.
I'm certain.
All right. This has been Benny Vasquez talking about AlmaLinux and all the stuff going on there. Been a lot of fun. We don't have a guest lined up yet for next week, so if you have a project that you want us to talk about, let us know. You can email us at floss@hackaday.com, I believe is the email address. If that doesn't work, come tag me on Twitter or the various places where I hang out. You could find me. There's also the security column, goes live every Friday morning on Hackaday. You can go and check that out. And then we do have the other show, the Untitled Linux Show, over at twit.tv/ULS. And we get up to all kinds of fun shenanigans there as well. You don't want to miss it. Appreciate everybody that watches and listens. Those get us live and on the download. And we will see you next time.